Hello, Collateral Gaming listeners. Chazzle Dazzle here from the Trial by Error Variety Show podcast. I just wanted to take a few seconds to invite you guys over to what we do. No, it's not video games, but we do invite really awesome and unique bands from all over the world. We dig deep into their souls and find really cool stories to tell you, and there's tons of music every week, so subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcast. We look forward to having you.
This episode of the bonus round, we are celebrating 35 years of The Legend of Zelda with our Zelda Dungeon recommendations, featuring special guest Dan Rockwood from Victims and Villains. So don't go anywhere, the show starts right now. Welcome to Collateral Gaming Bonus Round. I'm Ashley Chancellor.
I'm Zachary Guillo.
I'm Megan Gomez.
And I'm Dan Rockwood.
And we are podcasting from a few different places at once. And this is go number 2.
Here we go. Number 2.
Number two. Got my trusty little glass.
We recorded a sizable amount, like maybe 20 minutes into this episode, and then my external hard drive decided to disconnect from my computer. So I learned a lesson about saving these files temporarily locally and then moving them over to the external when I'm done. So
Thank you, technology. We appreciate you.
Technology is a beautiful thing, but that's
a pain in the
point
ass.
because we have some pretty beautiful stuff to talk about today.
we do.
But we also have a guest with us. Why don't you introduce yourself, my friend?
We do. Well, hey, everyone. So I am Dan. I'm over here from the Victims and Villains podcast, which I mostly do movie reviews and stuff over there. But I love games. I especially love Zelda. So I am super happy to be here to talk some cool Zelda dungeons with you all today.
Heck yeah, man. It's good to have you. It's good to have more people to talk to about Zelda. It's always fun doing it with Ash or with Megan or both or whatever. But when we have new people come in from outside, it's really a special experience because there's just more people
love
that we
guests.
can. Yeah, and we just love games, and talking about it adds to the experience. And it's a really good time to just sit down with fresh and old faces and just shoot the shit.
And
it's a really good
so
time.
good, we get to talk about it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
You
we're all
got it.
warmed up now, so
Yeah.
you'll get the best of us.
I'm
and-
not a nervous Nelly anymore, I'll tell you what.
But
Hi,
yeah,
Nelly.
Dan, we recorded with him before when we did the Majora's Mask episode on Victims and Villains. We were recording
Yaga?
with you and Captain Nostalgia, Megan and I, and that was a lot of fun. We
was so much fun.
Did that shortly before we actually did our Majora's Mask episode. So Dan messaged me recently, and he was like, "Hey, like, are you doing any like Zelda-related episodes?" I was, he was listening to our Ghost of Tsushima episode, right?
Mhm. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Hey, man, I've got this perfect thing that we're gonna do like next week." And he was like, "Okay, sign me on." So thanks for being on short notice, man. That is awesome, and I'm excited to get into our Zelda dungeons. Also, you also kind of have a little bit of a writer gig as well, right?
That's right. So I am, a little background on me. So I went to college for writing and journalism, and I'm fortunately able to do that full time. So my day job, I'm a digital editor in digital marketing, so not game related, but it's still get to write and edit words, which is awesome. But I am over doing as a staff writer, kind of freelancing for techraptor.net, and that's relatively new. I'm just a couple months in, but I am doing some fun game reviews and features, and am currently working on some cool Legend of Zelda stuff for their anniversary as well. So there's some good stuff coming down that way as well.
Yeah, we didn't even really get a chance to talk about the anniversary. Excuse me. I expect we'll talk about it on a future like Collateral Gaming news segment. But obviously, huge news. We watched the Nintendo Direct together, and we got to see the announcement of Skyward Sword HD. we're gonna have some more to say about that, I think, at a later point. This
Yeah.
episode, we're gonna probably try to keep that a little bit concise and get into the meat. For those of you who are not aware, we've mentioned this in the last couple episodes. Zach is actually writing for Zelda Dungeon now.
Yes, sir.
Woohoo!
Nice.
Thought I'd
a
throw
really
that
good
out there again. I feel like I need to brag on my boy.
I appreciate the love. I appreciate the love.
I know y'all are
out
making me
here-
want to contact a freaking random gaming website and be like, "Can I write for you?"
Well, if I can get Ash on the train, why can't I get Megan on the train? If you want to, if
The
like,
spirit train?
This,
Yeah.
you're fired.
We'll go through the spirit tracks together.
All
But
right.
Zelda Dungeon and Zach, obviously you know more at this point, but I feel just as an observer, they're like one of the definitive online resources for Zelda news, walkthroughs, wikis. Like anytime you search anything related to Zelda, Zelda Dungeon comes up
Yes.
right at the top. They're very well optimized in that way.
Yeah, I
I'm-
definitely when I'm going over like especially when Ash and I do like bonus rounds or like whenever we're on victims and villains and stuff, like I didn't even realize it until today because like I have stuff bookmarked for the podcast. I was like, oh my god, I've been going through Zelda Dungeon this whole time and like I didn't even realize it until today, and I was like, oh shit, Zach is writing for Zelda Dungeon. Like, oh wow.
It's really cool. It's the people are absolutely wonderful. Everybody is just so head over heels for Zelda, and that is an environment I've always wanted to be in. So it's really cool, and we have Discord meetings every now and then to talk about everything, and just hearing everybody like Zelda, 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 Zelda. It's a pretty it's a pretty wild experience, you know. It's just sometimes, you know, it's like those TurboTax commercials where all you hear is free, 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 but it's Zelda,
Oh my
Zelda,
God.
Zelda, Zelda. It's like that.
Zelda,
It's
Zelda,
so
Zelda.
beautiful.
And
Zelda.
it's so refreshing being around people like that, and I love talking movies and everything I do over at Victims and Villains, but we don't cover games all that often. E3 is like the one time a year I can really strong arm Josh into being like, we're gonna cover E3, we're gonna do some games.
We're talking about
and
this.
Yeah, 100%. And so having you guys here with a full show just committed to gaming and everything, like this is a dream come true to just come like talk video games with, good friends, good people. So it's definitely very happy to be here.
You're welcome anytime, good sir.
Mazel tov.
Well, thank you. And Ash, something. So I know you've mentioned because you did a while back that top 10 dungeon episode.
Yeah.
And I think that was just on your own, right? I don't think you had a co-host for that episode.
No, that was a solo venture.
Yeah,
Some
he
of
was
the
lone wolfing it.
some of the dungeons that we're going to talk about today actually did make my list that time, but I made sure to pick new ones for my list this time, of course.
So I think you released that episode. It must have been over the summer. I was taking walks on my lunch break, and that's I listened to that episode. I found it, and I was like, oh, like I like Zelda Dungeons. I want to see where this goes. And so it was super nice. I listened to you for like an hour and a half, just go into detail about different dungeons. It was awesome.
Just me. I apologize for that experience because I personally don't think that episode's very good. It's so awkward to listen to, and I was probably constantly uhing and umming and not knowing what I was doing, but I just wanted to get out something, and I at least was passionate enough to be able to talk for an hour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. I loved hearing your takes. I think Snowhead Temple from Majora's Mask was one you talked about in that episode, and it was cool. That's one of my all-time favorites as well. It's you had some really good stuff there.
Thanks. But I guess let's go into your dungeon picks for this episode, man. As our honored guest.
Well, I appreciate that. All right, so the first one that I want to bring out here is a dungeon in Skyward Sword, which we are getting the HD remaster of later this year. And I personally really like Skyward Sword. I know it's not a fan favorite necessarily, and it's not my favorite, but I do like it. And so I like to just quantify this game as being one of my least favorite Zelda games with my most favorite dungeons, because I think the dungeon design is really cool. And so I want to shout out the sand ship in the Lanayru Sand Sea from Skyward Sword. That whole area is just so cool and so unique, and just a really fun way to explore like this different part of the world.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Sandship was one of the ones that had made my list. It's one of my favorite dungeons from the Zelda franchise, easily in the top 5, and definitely I think my favorite from Skyward Sword, which has a lot of good dungeons, and I'm sure some of those are going to get brought up here. But I always loved the mechanic of the time shift stone in general, and comparing it with the other time shift dungeon in this game, which is the Laneru mining facility. The
Mhm.
Send ship, I just like even more because, first of all, you're on a ship, okay? An ancient tech ship with robots, and there are robot pirates on the ship as well. And there's just the one time shift stone that you access from several different vantage points on the ship that you strike with the bow, which is the dungeon item. Which is interesting because you get that item so late in the game, but man, does it get put to good use in that dungeon. Not only do I enjoy the time traveling mechanics, the fact that you're on a ship, the mini boss, which is a fucking robot pirate captain, but in addition to that, the whole like boss battle segment. I mean, the boss itself, and we've talked about this before on the show. The boss Tantalus is underwhelming in both terms of design and in terms of the boss fight itself. But the setup for that is cool. I love getting the little statue key thing, and then and suddenly these tentacles start coming in and penetrating the ship and taking it over whole, and you gotta run all the way back up to the deck, and then man, that is such a cool setup.
Well, Ash, you literally just said everything about the I was like enthralled at that rant. That was beautiful.
That was great.
It was
Good
so
stuff.
like in depth. I think my favorite part about the ship is the different ways you can manipulate the elevation with the time stones. Especially like once you get there and you activate that first time stone, you can climb up and fight all of these bokoblins as you're riding the what are they, the handlebars all the way up the wires. What are they? I guess that's what they're called, but you can just go across. There's actually a piece of heart behind on the mast of the ship. If you guys didn't know that, like once you go to the very top, you can drop down to the front of the ship that's not accessible from anything except the top. You can drop down there, use your sailcloth, and get a piece of heart.
Yeah.
So, but it's such a cool dungeon. You know, the ancient feel of it. You're on a pirate ship that's going in between the present and the past. It's really cool. The sacred flame that you get for this dungeon is kind of lame. It just allows you to douse for more abilities. And so that the boss and the sacred flame kind of kill the momentum. But other than that, it's one of the coolest dungeons in the Zelda series. Not only for its location, but its design and the way that it flows. You know, it's not really filled with any dull moments or anything. It doesn't have any momentum killers except for the very end, and I'm okay with that because that means you're getting ready to move on, and the sacred flames are amazing, so I'm not really complaining. I love the sand ship.
I personally have not played this one, so please don't crucify me, guys. But for me, I did watch somebody play Sandship, and I absolutely loved it. Because it was something different. It wasn't something that I've really seen too much in Zelda, and also the boss fight. It wasn't just oh look, there's a key. Oh look, there's a door. Big open space, creepy music. As a gamer, I know I am fucked. Which I absolutely enjoy. And also I just really liked how you could navigate your way through the ship, and it wasn't just like, okay, like here you can get on the main part of the ship and then like that's it. It's like there's so many different levels, so there's so much that you get to go through. Plus, I mean, like the tentacles were kind of bad. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was pretty bad. Like I had to think about it for a second, but like it was pretty bad.
Yeah, the tentacles were pretty bad now that I think about it. I love it.
It's such a cool, just like nautical type level, and I think that's one of the reasons why I loved Wind Waker so much. Just the whole seafaring theme of it. You were able to bring some of those vibes like into Skyward Sword, which was really
I was
cool.
kind of expecting a shanty, but there wasn't one. I was kind of upset, like a Zelda style shanty. That
if
would
you
be
guys
great.
really think about it, Skyward Sword, the art style, I swear it derived from the Wind Waker because they wanted to go with a more childish but not super immature display.
It's right in between Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. It's like the perfect
Yeah, that's what I was
combination.
gonna say. It kind of reminds me of like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, like if they were one game.
If they like
Like as
made
far
a
as like
child
art
together.
and concept.
And Breath of the Wild looks like what Wind Waker would have been had games been this advanced back then. Because honestly, when I look at Breath of the Wild, I look at it as a more mature and much more vast Wind Waker. Because what if the Great Sea depleted to show all of what's in Breath of the Wild? And that's why there are Koroks. That's a whole
Now you're
other
getting into the
conversation.
theories, yeah.
That's a whole conversation
See,
for another day. But
I've always felt almost the opposite, that they should fill Breath of the Wild with water, call it Breath of the Sea, and that should be the sequel, and just
Nice.
go like exploring.
Ooh, I haven't even played it yet. I'm stoked.
Wind Waker 2,
Oh.
basically.
yeah, Megan, you need to
Yeah.
get Breath of the Wild.
Dan, you had
I'm
mentioned
planning on it.
an Easter egg, actually, on the Sin ship, right?
Mhm.
Right, so there's actually a Titanic Easter egg
yeah.
from the film on this ship. So I can't remember exactly where it's at. It might be the captain's quarters, but there's an area where there are paintings on the wall. And if you look, there is a painting depicting of Zelda characters of the Jack and Rose at the front of the ship with their arms splayed out, that whole moment. And yeah, so I just love so much that is in a Skyward Sword game. I mean, guys, this game came out 10 years ago. I have not revisited it since then. So when I'm literally going to take time off work in July when this game is released, and I'm just going to sit down and play it. Like,
You sound
I'm
like me with
saving
E3, my dude.
Hey,
Oh yeah, I also take time off for E3 as well.
dude, you should be on the episode because I'm thinking we should definitely do a game launch episode whenever the Skyward Sword HD remake comes out.
I'm down
for that.
Would be amazing.
Yeah,
'Cause it'll be my first playthrough.
I buy most of my games physical, which is fine and that's fun, but I always have to wait until the morning to get them. I almost want to do digital just so right at midnight it's like I can just hit play and get going with it.
Well, you've already had the physical too.
True, but I should probably just also sleep that night and then just play the entire day. So we'll see. But I do kind of like. It's been a while since I've just like started a game at midnight and then just played it the entire night. That sounds really fun too.
Oh my God! What if all of us got together and just all played through the same Zelda game?
Just
and
an
see who
up
got
all
for
night like
first?
slumber party via
Yes.
Zoom. That'd
My
be
husband
great.
would stab me, but I'm down.
Skyward Sword, actually, I did that. I remember getting it at midnight and playing like all through the night. And getting like all the way to like the Steel Temple and that one playthrough and exhilarating.
You have to 100% it. All of us in a group have to 100% the game together, and the first
Oh,
person
no.
to finish, and that includes the Hylian Shield boss rush.
Oh.
We gotta
I haven't
That
even
is
played this game
one-
yet. I already know I'm gonna lose.
There are parts that are challenging, and honestly, the motion controls do make it difficult. So I'm curious to see if the buttons will make it more complicated, or if that will make it just much easier. I have no idea how it's going to work.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, we could probably spend the rest of the day talking about Skyward Sword.
Yeah, we're
So-
trying to not get into it, but we're excited.
So, but Megan, what about you? What's your first pick?
Do I have to start off with a bang? Absolutely. Freaking Spirit Temple, Ocarina of Time, inside
Yes.
the goddess.
What?
Chef's kiss.
That's
Great.
your pick?
Hell yeah!
I'm
Yeah.
so surprised. I'm shocked.
I mean, we haven't already talked about it, but I mean, I
We're
just felt like
not
being dramatic for
crying
the
at all that
podcast
we
because
lost
this
the
is the first
first
time they're listening to it. So, yeah, especially because like Ocarina of Time, definitely one of my favorite games. It was so, fundamental for me, and I just absolutely loved how intense and scary this one was because it was like you're a kid playing this and it's all spooky and there's like just this dark ambiance and you're inside a freaking goddess. You're also in like basically the homeland of Ganon. You're like, okay, my antagonist here, and I'm in his home inside a goddess. Okay, let's do it. And it's like you're leading up to the final boss fight, so it's like this big climatic rise, and it's like it's all there. Plus, I mean, the music is just 10 out of 10 would recommend. Definitely listen to it while you're studying because you will get any finals done. Promise.
I
love the part in that temple that it kind of reminds me of in Resident Evil 4. There's that weird room where there's like the giant Salazar statue and you have to move his hands and to get to different levels.
Yeah.
There's a similar type situation in the Spirit Temple where there's the huge like statue in that room and you have to go up and move like different levels around and try to figure out just how to navigate that space. But the puzzles in that game, that temple, are so cool because a lot of them you use the mirror shield for, and there are a lot of light-based puzzles which you don't really see anywhere else in the game. So that's a really cool, like, unique thing that temple brings.
You
Yeah,
don't
it's not really
see that
useful
in
afterwards,
any
but it's great.
games. I haven't played another video game where I had a puzzle using light to reflect off of something I've got.
Majora's Mask.
Majora's Mask, and also Twilight Princess, the mirror shield, or not the mirror, the big mirror.
The mirror. Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about now.
I can't remember the name of it for the life of me right now. My mind just went choo choo. There goes my train of thought.
The Mirror of Twilight?
Yes, thank you. F.
It's half the name is in the name of the game, and then that word you just said.
Oh man.
If someone could just find my last two brain cells rubbing each other around in my brain, that'd be great.
Yeah. The Spirit Temple is a wicked dungeon. It's got a very ancient feel to it, and it's a lot of fun to go through knowing that once you beat this dungeon, if you're playing it in the normal order, once you beat this, you'll have all the sages freed, and you can go finally challenge Ganon. But I think the build-up to this dungeon is one of the best in the game because you not only have to do the puzzle of getting through the desert, you have to go through the Gerudo Fortress. I don't know why I just said Gerudo. That's disrespectful.
Gerudo?
The Gerudo Fortress. And it's just a really cool setting because it's kind of a scary fortress that you have to not be caught in and just free people. It's a really good experience, and I'm excited because I'm about to get to this part of the game. I just beat the Shadow Temple on Ocarina of Time 3DS, so I'm really excited to go back through this again and check it all out.
Yeah,
So,
I'm really glad that you brought up the Spirit Temple. That was another one that was on my top 10 my top 10 list, and again, I think that would likely be my favorite dungeon from Ocarina of Time. Just because it's the only dungeon in the entire game that actually requires you to go into it as both a child and an adult.
Yes.
And then the puzzles, I think, in that dungeon are just the best out of all of them. I love the light-based puzzles. I love the mirror shield as a dungeon item. And I love the boss, Twinrova.
Yes.
Yeah, the boss
well
in that
done.
game is phenomenal. I just love that it's not just, like this big fat thing sitting in the middle of the room and it's just you have to roll around it. Kind of like some of the other bosses. It's actually, like, oh, there's two of them. I can't just dodge and roll away from this one. Like, what do I do? Like, it actually challenges you.
Especially the the post-fight monologue between the sisters. So they're just arguing. It seems like it's a bit too much, but it's still hilarious to watch because they're just like, no, we should have killed him. What's wrong with you, Ma?
No.
And for a game that was released in 1998 on the Nintendo 64 with what at the time was limited processing power, the elemental graphics and just the way those visuals are displayed, like those are so gorgeously done comparatively to just other areas of the game where things can feel a little flat at times. There was just so much there's a lot of dynamic architecture going on with those attacks, especially, and being able to reflect one at the other. It was just such a cool, one of my all-time favorite boss fights.
Yeah, for sure, dude. I love the mini boss fight as well against the first Iron Knuckle in the game, not to be confused with Dark Nuts, although they're practically the same thing.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same
hit
thing.
me while I'm down, Ash.
Mhm.
Gosh. I made that mistake when we were previously recording. I called it a
I fucked
fucking
up
Dark
one
Knight.
time.
You're not a true Zelda fan. I should have
And-
that
and
Zelda
not-
dungeon position now.
Oh!
Hang him. What is it
Wow.
that what is it that he says in Pirates of the Caribbean? He goes,
being
hang him.
thrown.
But
Oh,
When you fight the Iron Knuckle, is that just before you get the silver gauntlets, I think? Is that
Yes.
what he's
Yeah.
guarding?
yeah,
Essentially.
well, I think you fight it twice because one of them, I believe, guards the mirror shield.
Mm-hmm.
And do you fight the first one as a child, and that's what gets you the silver gauntlets? Are there two of them in that dungeon? It's been a while now. I can't remember.
You got me beat on that one. I can't
Yeah.
remember if it was one way or the other.
Okay.
I keep
Definitely
wanting to
something.
revisit this game, but then I keep waiting for it to be released on Switch, so I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I'm
Hopefully
really
this year. If
hoping
we don't get
that
it
we
in
get something,
2021.
yeah.
What if we
Yeah,
just
if
get a
we
Breath
don't,
of the Wild
I'll-
style Ocarina of Time remaster, dude? I would cry.
Oh man, can you imagine? Someday,
cry.
Oh my
maybe.
god. It would take so long for them. But I mean, they did it with Spyro. They brought the graphics to, a current, standard.
Crash Bandicoot as well.
Yeah.
And I was just about saying Crash. I was taking a breath in. Jesus, let me
And-
let me breathe.
the
Bash
Ocarina
Bandicoot.
3D remake is phenomenal. So
Yeah. I mean, they could probably elevate it a little bit more because the more that I've been playing Nintendo games, the more I can see that they're really trying to up their graphics game. It's not as like there's still cartoon aspects to it, but it's not as cartoony as it used to be, and I'm really really feeling it. I'm Nintendo, you got my heart right now.
All right. Well, what about you, Zach?
I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm going to replace the one I said before we had to delete this because I had two that were kind of neck and neck for my last position.
Okay.
I've
Fair
been playing the Oracle games, and I just got to level 6, which is the Mermaid's Cave. Now, I love this dungeon because Oracle of Ages has a aspect where you have to go from the past to the present. You have to travel through time to solve different puzzles, to save different people, and ultimately the goal of that game is to save Nehru, the Oracle of Ages. She's been kidnapped by Varen, Sorceress of Shadows, and you have to go through the different dungeons in the game and collect the 8 Essences of Time. Now, Dungeon 6 is Mermaid's Cave. In order to get to this dungeon, it's up in it's like Roholant or something ridge where all the Gorons live. And basically you have to go through and trade different items with Gorons in the past and take those items to the present and trade with Gorons that are looking for historical items. It's really cool. And once you get there, you're in the past the first time you enter the dungeon. Once you solve some points and do everything that you can, you have to go outside, go to the present, and go back into the Mermaid's Cave. But the trick is, to open both of these dungeons, you have to have both the key from the past and the key from the present. So you have to go through different puzzles like trading and dancing with Goron tribe members to get different keys. And it's really cool. Just getting to this dungeon is awesome. It's okay, so between each dungeon, it's about 45 minutes of game time. Between level 5 and level 6, they're in the same area, so it's about a 20-25 minute transition period. But during those 25 minutes, you dance with Gorons and get keys. You have to play a mini game where you have to survive a bunch of bombs being thrown at you. You have to continuously dodge out of the way so that you can get a drink to give it to the guard that's about to pass. He's about to pass out from thirst. And he gives you the key to the dungeon in the dungeon in the past. It's really, really hard to explain, but it's really cool. The dungeon itself is awesome because it's got like an ancient ruin type look, but it's dark and purple and black with colors that would remind you of like an evil mermaid. You know, if the Little Mermaid went like rated R, that type of feeling. The puzzles in the dungeon are really cool because they're based on taking elements that you did in the past and applying them to elements in the present because they're still there after all that time. Like you have to push a block in the past to access a door that's in the present that hasn't been built yet. It's really cool, and I love those types of puzzles. The mini boss is a little bat. I forget his name, but he is in both Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons as the mini boss of the 6th dungeon. He's this little vampire bat that is constantly trying to protect whoever he can serve, because he just doesn't want to die. Every single time you fight him, he runs away because he doesn't want to lose.
What a little bitch.
And so it takes classical Zelda elements from the past games, and you have like a little like a little tennis session with him where you have to bat his balls back at him and stuff like that. And once you beat him
bat his
in
what
this
back
dungeon,
at him?
Stop. Bat his his orbs. I'm gonna say that nasty, but his orbs. That sounds even worse for some reason. But in the Mermaid's Cave, the item that you get is the mermaid suit, which is one of the most unique items in the Zelda series. You get a suit that literally allows you to travel in deep waters. Like you can swim in the ocean, and you can swim in
the
like
Zora
super.
armor.
Well, yes, but you move like super quick. The faster you tap the I hate you. No, the faster you tap the D-pad, the faster you'll swim. You can move really quickly. You can use your sword underwater while swimming super fast. It's a lot of fun, and it prevents you from drowning. So it's really cool to do that. And the boss is this giant squid-like creature that you're in a center pit. And this boss-like creature keeps attacking you from the edges of the room. Once you do enough damage, he'll turn over, and you have to jump in the water, go submerge, and fight him underwater, where he has like a different barrage of like ink attacks. And it's a lot of fun. This is one of my highly recommended dungeons from both of those games. I think Oracle of Ages has better dungeons, but Oracle of Seasons has better puzzles.
Yeah.
But I would highly recommend Mermaid's Cave. I don't know if any of you guys have played these games.
I have played
I would-
Ages, and I believe I've gotten that far in the game.
So
I
yeah,
seem to recall some of the things that you were saying, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm loving playing through this game again. It's been a long time. So,
I'll wait and see if they remake it this year. Like Link. I would
Oh my
love to
God.
see a Link's Awakening style remake of the Oracle games.
yes.
Just bundle together so that way you don't have to like buy them both, but just package them together so you can play one and then the other, and then you'll automatically have a linked game. Of course, the Pokemon games still come separately, so who knows?
Yeah, I was about to say Pokemon still comes separately, so I don't know.
But that's
We'll
just
see.
kind of their thing.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dan? Oracle games?
Yeah,
Mermaid's
I
Cave?
think it's likely we'll see a remake of it this year. So these are 2 Zelda games that I have not yet managed to get to. I own them. I bought the digital editions on the 3DS because that
Yes.
console is an insane Zelda machine. If you want access to easily 10 Legend of Zelda games, pick up a 3DS or 2DS, and between the remasters and what's available on the eShop and the Virtual Console, you will be able to find a bunch of those games.
They're
But
only on the
yeah,
3DS Virtual Console, by the way, because I just looked. I don't know why they're not on the Wii U Virtual Console, but they're only on the 3DS.
It's so strange, and I'm hoping just bring everything to Switch. Everything
Please.
should come to
Please.
Switch.
If Nintendo's smart, I mean, there's an untapped market there. Can you imagine all the people who played Nintendo era games, Super Nintendo era games, Nintendo 64 era games, and let's finally get a Virtual Console of the GameCube because it's been long enough. We should have gotten that
Yeah.
on the Wii U.
Well, they do have that. You
Has-
can play a lot of the older. You have to. I think it's in the Nintendo Direct. It was in the newsletter too. I just read a couple weeks ago. But you can play older games. It's like I don't even remember
They
what
have
that has like a.
Some kind of equivalent of the Virtual Console now that it's playing
Yeah.
some certain arcade games. So I'm hoping,
Yeah.
and they do actually have a Nintendo and Super Nintendo library, I believe, already on the Switch. But
Yeah, they do.
yeah,
They do.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll definitely get those. So those are games that I really want to check out. Those are probably next on my list. I'm kind of going backwards with Zelda games. So my first one ever was Ocarina of Time, and then I've played all of the main console ones, and then I've been going back. So like I played Minish Cap a couple summers ago. I just
Yeah.
played
Hell
Link's
yeah.
Awakening last summer. I did the Link's Awakening, both the original and the Switch version that came. So yeah, it's high time for me to check out the Oracle games, and I know people who have played them really love them. There's a lot of really good emotions toward those games.
Mhm.
hell yeah.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. You will very, very much enjoy them, and especially how you can connect your link from one game and take it to the other
can-
using codes. I think that's a really, really cool aspect that needs to come back at some
So you
point.
can link the games together.
I'm gonna eat my
Zach,
mic.
Do you have a recommendation of is it better to start with Oracle of Ages or Oracle of Seasons, or does it matter?
Start with Ages. That way you'll get
Okay.
the most. Okay, so Ages based game, in my opinion, is better than Seasons based game. And so the actual events that conspire the first time you play Ages, they are so good. And it's a really good story to experience with a fresh link. And then once you beat Ages, it's going to give you a hero's code, and you take that to Seasons and plug that code into the compiler, and it'll give you a main linked game, which is the link you played as in Ages, but brought over to Seasons. So you'll start off with 4 hearts instead of 3. And once you go through that, the characters in both of the games, some of them are similar. So you'll run into Impa in both games, and she'll recognize you from your first game. And she'll be like, hey, welcome to Holodrum, since you'll be playing Seasons second. She'll be like, it's good to see you here. I hope you're doing well. And then she introduces you to Din. And there are a lot of events that happen in Seasons that are slightly different because it's the same link from Labrina. And so I recommend playing Seasons second. And then once you beat Seasons, I'm not going to tell you what happens at the very end of a main linked game, but you can take the code that you get at the end of that game and take it back to Ages. So that Link will do that.
Cool.
He'll go back in time essentially and do that again, but he'll know everybody. It's crazy how it works, but it's a lot of fun to do. And both dungeons have both games have 8 dungeons with 8 essences to collect. And, it's really cool. It's got a typical Legend of Zelda style feel, 8 dungeons, and then final boss. So
I really hope that if
Awesome.
they do release them bundled together, which I actually think would be more likely, that there's a strong warning whenever if you've already started one of the games to not start the other game until you finished it, because I know a lot of people are going to be
Yeah.
tempted to kind of play both at the same time, and they should probably just like plug a warning in there like, hey, if you're starting this game, just be aware that certain features will become available if you've completed the other game first.
Yeah.
Just something like
That's smart.
that. Just an aside, it just randomly popped into my mind. But I guess I'm going to go ahead and go into my
Nope,
first pick.
you're not allowed to. You're
And
fired.
y'all haven't this is as far as we got, so y'all haven't heard any of my picks yet. Most of my picks, or actually all my picks, are from mainstream console games. I just, when I was thinking about it, I really wanted to come back to some of these. These are some of the ones I think I wanted to incorporate in my original like top 10 list, and I just didn't get a chance to due to lack of numbers. But I'm gonna start with The Wind Waker because it was my very first Zelda game,
I knew it.
and I'm gonna bring up Tower of the Gods because
Oh boy, that's
It
a
is-
big one.
Okay.
it is one of the dungeons that I went back and I thought maybe I should have had this instead of what I picked, because I remember I talked about Forsaken Fortress just because I
That's a
love
good
the
one
whole
too, though.
Oh yeah.
I love the whole stealth aspect the first time you come around, and then I like the fact that you come back to it and actually complete it. But thinking back
cool.
now, Tower of the Gods is such an enjoyable dungeon because it's kind of a two-phase dungeon. The original part of the dungeon, of course, you are sailing around and you're getting to use the King of Red Lions for a good portion of that, and going back and forth and having to deal with different water levels. And again, it's a water dungeon that's actually pretty good, but only because it's not really a water dungeon just for like the first like third of it, and then or first half of it, however you want to look at it. But after that, of course, then you start the main part of the dungeon, at which case the item is the hero's bow. And I really love what you get to do with the command melody, getting to control statues, if not for, of course, the tedious aspect of having to play the song over and over and over again. Even in the HD version, they didn't really come up with a fix for that. But I did like the whole aspect of that. I felt like that particular song was fairly underutilized for most of the game, at least until you get to the sages section. But
Yeah.
getting to control those statues, and then getting the bow, and then of course the boss Godon was just
That
Yeah,
one's a good one. That one's one of my favorite personal bosses because he's a stickler for sure for drama.
I like getting up to him because it's just one of those grand staircase scenarios where
Yes.
you make it up a long
Oh, yeah.
flight of stairs to get to the boss's door, and once you go in, it's just this giant god-controlled robotic head that pops up, and his hands come up off the wall, and you're like, "Oh shit, it's showtime! Let's go, baby!" And
He's such a
the
drama queen, though.
He is a drama queen. He's fabulous. But no, it's
Fabulous.
I love
it's like the
when
king
you do
from
damage
Katamari
him.
Damacy.
Yes, exactly.
Rainbow.
But it's like when you do damage to him, he like sneezes out arrows, and that's the cutest thing in the world. If you're running low on arrows, he'll go, and like arrows will pop out. And you're like, oh, okay, cool.
What a
Thanks,
chat,
buddy.
man.
But to piggyback off what you were saying, Ash, about how the HD version didn't really fix any of the melodies and how much you had to play them, I actually don't mind that because it adds just a tiny bit of tediousness. Because if you're a seasoned Zelda player, you're going to be able to go through these dungeons like it's nothing. Like the Tower of the Gods is a dungeon that we've all probably played like at least 4 or 5 times. It's a classic in a very, very good, strong Wind Waker title. So adding that little bit of repetitiveness is a really good way to kind of keep you on your toes as a player, because it's annoying enough to where it just kind of makes you lose your sanity, or it annoys you at least a little bit to where you could lose track of doing something else. And I love using the command melody because you get to control the statues and where they're placed. I've always loved puzzles like that. I hate the first part of the dungeon though, where you're sailing around the bottom of it. I've never enjoyed water level type stuff. That's why the water temple will never even come close to being on a list like this for me.
What?
I hate the water temple so
Much better
And
in the 3D version, though.
It is, and Dark Link is amazing, but that's about the only good thing I can say about it. But as far as oh my god, as far as that goes, Tower of the Gods is it's a
Godly.
phenomenal dungeon. It's pretty good. It's up there.
You could call it
It's-
divine.
Wow,
Huh.
you're fired.
Ooh, good one.
Nice.
Ash,
Tower
you're
of the
fired.
Gods made it onto my list as well.
Yeah.
It's
Awkward.
such
Thanks,
an
Ash.
That's all right. Yeah, way to go, man. It's so cool. I love so when I was playing Wind Waker years and years and years ago, I didn't get the game and I didn't like it for a very long time. It took me years to finally really appreciate it. And a lot of that is because I was stuck at the first dungeon, so I never even got to Tower of the Gods. I never got to anything that comes after. And so after you collect those first few dungeons and you beat them, you are able to summon the Tower of the Gods from the depths of the sea. And I just remember sailing up to it. It's so massive, and it's just this like dark shape in the distance as you're heading
Yes.
toward it.
It's
And then it slowly
intimidating.
comes into focus. It's so scary. But it's such a cool, unique dungeon, and it's really the catalyst for the rest of the game. And once you beat it, I'll avoid spoilers here, but you basically unlock like the story of Hyrule and the Great
Yes.
Sea and how everything is connected. Like I love
Yes.
that part of it so much. Like that's when the game really starts to pick up and take off for me.
Well, that's
Yeah,
I think
me too.
right where the mid-story quest change happens in the game. That happens in almost every Zelda game, you know, where
well,
midway
yeah,
through the
that-
story, you know, it's like right after you get the few shadows, or right after
Oh, yeah.
you collect the
Mhm.
spiritual stones. It's that midpoint of the game where you think that the original quest is kind of over, but then there's a new quest, and that happens right after the Tower of the Gods, or really right after the second visit to Forsaken Fortress, I should say. But go ahead,
Yeah,
Zach. You look like you were wanting to say something.
Yeah, this
Pick me,
one's like
pick me.
trying to come out so hard. I was like trying to hold myself back. I was like, I gotta say this. But no, I feel like at this point, if you're listening to this, or I'm sure every single one of us have played the Wind Waker multiple times, so I don't think we have to worry too much about spoilers. But I really like this because it's also the changing point where Link finally realizes I've been chosen as the hero of legend, because this game starts out with you going to save your sister. That's it. That's all Link has in his mind. He's going to do everything in his power to save his sister, but he picks up the Master Sword. It accepts him as the master, and then he has the journey of going and blessing the sword and having it prayed for so that he can actually become a hero of legend, the only hero of legend that put himself in the role and wasn't chosen.
Hell yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
true.
really cool because the Tower of the Gods paves the way for that. After you finish the dungeon, you have the access to go see Hyrule, the land it is under the water, and it's beautiful. Like, I really wish they had done a direct sequel on a main console for the Wind Waker, because Hyrule was gorgeous.
I feel like there could be like
Yeah.
a meme here. I'm thinking a meme here. Okay, we have the Virgin Twilight Princess Link versus the Chad, or the Virgin Hero of Twilight versus the Chad Hero of the Winds from the Wind Waker. You know, Virgin adult Link from Twilight Princess was born with the Triforce. The Chad Hero of the Winds
Virgin?
Link had to acquire the Triforce of Courage.
What are you
I was
talking
born
about?
into it,
There's
molded
no
by
way.
it.
There is no. There's no way Twilight Princess Link was a virgin, bro. Elia had her eyes all over him.
Ilia
there-
was
that's
on that
true,
shit.
but it's just a meme, bro. It's what they say. I mean, if
He has
anything, I
that
really hope that
innocent
Hero
farm
of the
boy
Winds
look
Link.
about him.
Don't
You know?
talk about our innocent man getting screwed, man. Don't
Bro,
ruin my
he's gorgeous.
childhood.
You can't avoid that.
Also, tying back into things that are not ya nasties, the tower is also meant to test the hero's courage. Like, this was like almost like I don't even know what to compare this to. Kind of like I know it's a random one-off movie, but kind of like the trials for the Dauntless and Divergent. You know, like it's
Oh,
one of those
yeah.
kind of things where it tests the hero's courage. It tests, can you do this? Are you able to, live up to this standard? Are you a hero or are you not?
Yes.
Just
And
wanted to
Hero,
bring
or
in
are
that
you a
analogy.
zero?
the whole dungeon is a trial, and the boss
Zero to
Godon
zero.
is not a bad guy. He's, he is. It's a trial, and that's why he
Yeah.
gives you arrows if you run out. He's like, he just snot rockets them out. Like.
That's you.
You must kick my ass for Hyrule. That's basically what's happening right now.
We're kind of running up pretty quick here, so I guess let's move on. Dan, what
two.
is your let's go into round two.
Totally. So I am gonna pick a dungeon from A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS,
Oh, hell yeah.
and I'm gonna select the Dark Palace.
Yes.
Nice.
That is probably my favorite dungeon in that game. I love that game because that was really one of the early points of you can do a dungeon in any order, and you have access to like every item in the game. You have access to it through the shop if you want it, and it was so cool. So I went through that dungeon toward the end of my run through of that game, but it could have been the first dungeon that you do. All depends on what order you want to do them in. But man, that was so cool. I love the art style of that game and that dungeon especially. It's both literally and figuratively dark, being the dark palace. You need to go from room to room and kind of illuminate things as you go. But yeah, it was just so cool, and definitely one of the big stands out of that game for me.
Yeah, and I remember that dungeon being pretty difficult in A Link to the Past as well. But I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I played A Link Between Worlds as well. We're not going to mention that out loud.
No,
but I did like the aspect of having to light up the dungeon as you go, and like you said, being able to have take full advantage of the items that you can get at the time, and it is one of the and for most people it may be one of the first dungeons you play once you get to low rule. But obviously you can also, save it for the end. And for me, I was actually pretty in A Link Between Worlds. I remember I didn't want to leave the items rented, so I pretty much bought items as soon as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as soon as I was able to, which for me, I felt like almost defeated part of the purpose of the game. So the second time I played it through, I decided to rent the items, like when I'm using them for the dungeon, and then buy them afterwards. But the first time I played the game, like I didn't want to have to worry about having to like rent items. I just wanted to purchase them outright. So I saved up rupees and purchased them outright.
Yep. I did the same thing, and honestly, that game is an amazing experience. Running through the world reimagined was awesome. High rule and low rule instead of the light world and the dark world. I absolutely loved the aspect of fusing into the wall and you become a painting, and and that's how you traverse between the worlds. I don't remember the Dark Palace as much, but I can talk on this game because this game is amazing. It really brought A Link to the Past to a new light and reimagined the game, because you don't fight Ganon, you fight Uganon or whatever is Uganon, and that's a really good fight because when you're walking up to the final boss, there's thunder and lightning going, and it's very, very dark and ominous, and you just finally walk in. It feels like a true Zelda game, and I love that. It's really good stuff.
I remember staying up late. What my like biggest memory of A Link Between Worlds is, for some reason, is I remember staying up late trying to finish everything 100% before I went to Laurel Castle, and I remember playing that fucking baseball game, and that shit was hard. It took so many tries. I stayed up to all night just trying to get through that fucking baseball mini game until I became like a master at it. But
I almost didn't play this game because I was not a fan of the like 2D top down, and this is really like a 2.5D game that used the 3DS's 3D capability. I feel was really well done with this game. But my current fiance, girlfriend at the time, got it for me for Christmas that year, the year it came out, and I'm very happy she did, because it ended up being just such a fun Zelda experience for me to play. And I was working as an EMT at the time, so I was just like on an ambulance playing Zelda games on my 3DS between calls, so that was a good time.
Dude, nice. I'm a transport driver trying to become an EMT.
I know.
That's good stuff,
I saw you perk up as soon as he said that. I was like, Zach's like, huh?
That's pretty dope. I'm hoping to be an EMT by December.
You had the same ambulance?
You had the same look on your face, like if anybody mentions Mass Effect for Megan.
Oh man, Megan, what's your next dungeon?
Yes.
So my next one is going to be obviously from my favorite Zelda game, Snow Peak Ruins.
Oh hell yeah!
Yes.
You took one of my picks though, but go for
Yes!
it.
You also took one of my picks.
Oh, glad we all are on the same page. So for me, Snow Peak Ruins, I just love the fact that you're up in a snowy mountain. You're just like, all of a sudden you're riding down this cliff going after a big ass Yeti. Like, what the fuck am I doing? What is going on? Why do these people need this help? Like, you're like, all right. I know a lot of people, criticize, Twilight Princess because it is one of the, compared to some others, it's one of the easier Zelda games. It's more cinematic than others, but I love it because of that aspect, and I love the, of course, the story the little love story that you get in the end, because I'm an absolute sucker, obviously. I'm, total romantic. And it's not like another dungeon where it's creepy and there's creepy crawlies. Like literally you're in just like this big massive mansion and like you feel like you could just go in and kick your feet up almost at first, and then you're like, oh, there's creatures here.
Oh,
Cool,
it's
so
a
we're not here to
dungeon.
chill. Yeah.
I love that realization where like you enter the Snow Peak ruins and you know it's such a unique dungeon for this, and that this is another one that like after doing my top 10 list, I really wish I had talked about this one, and that's why it was on this list, because it is such a unique experience, and I love that you don't immediately realize that you're in a dungeon. Like at first you're like, I'm in someone's home, but then you're like, oh wait, no, this is a dungeon. Okay, but I love how the fucking Yetta like sends you out on like 3 different side quests, go looking for the key, and you slowly build up the soup.
Yeah, no, you're literally going on a
That's the
grocery run
best
across this
part.
this ruin, and you're like, okay, like, is this a shopping trip or am I saving somebody? Like, what the fuck is going
You
on?
get
Yeah.
to this super hard puzzle section where you have to like aim the cannon correctly. And you have to
Yes.
fight this big ass guard so that you can get with the ball. So you beat him after you get the ball and chain or before?
He's the
After.
mini boss, and so after
that's the mini boss.
whenever you fight him, you get the ball and chain. Which, by the way, another
Don't shoot me with my own gun.
another
hard
item
fight. You have to
from
hook shot
Twilight
behind
Princess,
him.
huh?
You have to hook shot behind him to beat him. It's so hard because
Oh,
he's
because
so big.
he uses the
Yeah.
ball and chain. That's right. He uses
Yeah.
it, and you get it from him after you beat him.
Oh.
And they use it on the boss, and the boss is pretty much like, don't shoot me with my own gun. What the fuck are you doing?
The music for mini bosses in this game is unparalleled. I will also say that. That theme is so intense, and it's great. I used to pause the game just so I could listen to it as a kid. Like, holy shit, this is awesome.
Literally me with the entire Twilight Princess. I would literally just sit there, and this is gonna sound, this again, showing my age in this one. I would take and I would stop Link when he was like Wolf Link, or when he was just running around with Zelda, or not. Yeah, well, whenever he was running with Zelda in the temple, I would literally take pictures with a camera of this game. Like I was that captivated by it. I would have a camera in front of my screen, just look how pretty this game is, because screenshots weren't a thing yet.
And you're sitting here, you're playing the game, you're listening to the music, and you're like, why do I have a boner right now?
No, the main thing, I think one of my favorite things
It's
from
very
Twilight
confusing.
Princess. Yeah, it's like this shouldn't be happening. But when you're sitting on the title screen and you just watch that whole sequence of Link running across the bridge.
Oh my god,
And then
yes.
it just transitions to him being a wolf and howling into the night, and then it shows like a little demo for the game.
I
that
used to
has
watch
some
that
of the
again
best
and again and
music.
again
Me too.
because that music was so fucking good, dude. I know.
So good. It kind of brought a tear to your eye, but I was like, dang, I'm about to play this game.
I
don't know
still
why
watch
Again,
that on
why
YouTube.
it's my favorite. Everybody
it's
hates
really
on
good.
it, but it's the best.
I will say that Twilight Princess,
Yeah.
Megan, you're going to hate me for this, and I'm very sorry, but I will say that Twilight Princess's art style is ugly. It is very
That hurts my
ugly.
one feeling.
It's a beautiful game. Do not get me wrong. It is one of
You
the
know what?
best Zelda
It-
experiences. It looks too hyper realistic.
I love that about it. It kind of reminds me, I know this is going to sound very basic white girl of me, but it kind of reminds me of like if a game was created like from a movie with a VSCO filter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like it's
you're
it's
right.
got
see
like that
that.
film to it, and I love the like the light aspects of it. Just I could go on and on. I'm sure that we'll eventually do an episode about it, and I'll probably go on for 2 hours just about the graphics, because it was the most advanced graphics from that console at the time for me personally.
For a
It
GameCube
was just so
slash
stunning.
Wii game, a GameCube game that was basically ported over to the Wii, so it was already
Mm-hmm.
behind.
Yeah.
It was actually very impressive at the time. The graphics feel a little bit dated now, and especially when you play
Yeah.
the HD version, that really hits home. With Wind Waker, just for some reason, just dating so much better because of the
Mm-hmm.
But that being aside, though, I love the aesthetic. I
Mm-hmm.
love the art style itself. I love that it's a little bit more anime-esque, and I love that it's one of the Zelda games that dared to be more dark and realistic. And not a lot of other Zelda games have done that. In fact, it's the only one, since then. And it got a little bit of criticism for that, but I feel like Twilight Princess is one of those that is one of the more beloved entries in the franchise in the end. Just a lot of the haters are kind of loud. But going back to Snow Peak Ruins, of course, the ball and chain, I think, is one of another classic example of Twilight Princess's awesome, unique, fun dungeon items that are just so underutilized.
The spinner.
I was
The
gonna make a
spinner.
comparison really quick before we bounce too far off of it.
Sure.
For me, Twilight Princess is like the Shadow of Colossus of Zelda games. It has that similar feel to it, and that's what I love about it, because I am such a big fan of Shadow of the Colossus and Eco, and of course, The Last Guardian, duh. So for me, it kind of like once I got older, it reminded me of that, and I think that's why it's my favorite Zelda game, because it has that feel to it.
It's the first Zelda game I waited for, and I got on release night. And that was special for me. And I remember I didn't have a Wii. I had a GameCube, so I had to wait a couple days for the GameCube release. But I did, because there were just a few days difference. Man, I was in love. I could not stop playing the game. It was my favorite game of all time. At that, I was obsessed with it. I mean, I remember going to school, and I think I was like in 5th grade at the time, so a lot of the kids for some reason just wanted to be edgy and like play PlayStation and Xbox. They thought they were too cool for Nintendo. And right at that age where or that's how they are. But for me, like, I was just sitting and I'm just enjoying the hell out of Twilight Princess, and I didn't even care about. I was like, Call of what? I don't play that. I play Zelda.
Watch yourself.
No. At the time, I was one of those like pretentious gamers that thought I was like
going dark.
I thought it was like too good for shooters or something. But
I did until I was 20, my dude. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. It happens.
yeah, it happened. Eventually,
Like,
you
no,
come to
I'm
a
a
realization
storyline only
that
gamer.
yeah. Well, I'm mainly a
Right.
narrative guy. I'm mainly like narrative style games, but yeah, I love that you brought out Snow Peak Ruins, because that is one of my favorites, and I love we haven't even talked about the boss, Yetta. The main NPC that you become is
Was it Blizzetta? Blizzetta
yeah,
was her name?
Gets
Yetta.
possessed. Well, Yetta is her name, but when she's possessed by the Dark Mirror, or the Mirror of Twilight, I just made
It's Zeta.
a Megan flub.
Hey.
She becomes Blizzetta, and I love the music of that boss battle in particular. It's kind of almost like circusy, and
Yeah.
With an organ in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
With the organ.
Well, I mean, that's also. Yeah,
It's so
Yeah.
good. I love the aspect of having to use the reflection of the ice to beat her too.
Yes.
Like to watch her different spires of ice as she's coming around, and then when she lands and starts spinning around, you have to use the ball and chain to knock her back, and then she just becomes this giant. Oh no, that's the Zant fight. I'll talk about that here in a minute.
I was gonna say that's reused in the Zant fight. That was such a cool
Oh my
concept that they had to
God,
reuse it.
bro. And should we transition with this?
Well, yeah. I mean,
It's about
your
to be
pick
Zach's
now.
turn, anyways. Go for it.
Because my next pick is the Palace of Twilight from Twilight Princess.
Oh.
Okay.
That dungeon
Yes.
is
That's great.
fantastic, dude. I love it so much. You finally get to, as Link, explore the Twilight Realm because you have the Master Sword and you're with Midna. The first part is to go into these side corridors and get these orbs.
Oh,
so that you can
God.
put them in the middle and bless the Master Sword.
That
with the
terrified me. That
It's
terrified.
terrifying because when you finally get the orb, the Wall Master wakes up and he starts.
They're just
following
running
you.
after you.
It's
Oh.
so slow and tedious, and
Yep.
he's just like this, and it does the cutscene every time, just so it can let you know, hey, he's here with you. You better get to stepping. And the puzzles are hard. You have you have to stand on a ledge to activate a switch while also going around with the ball in hand, so you can't defend yourself while you're carrying it.
And he's making
then-
that funny noise. Hup, 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 hup.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, just like that. And once you finally put those orbs in the pedestals at the front, all Master Sword cutscenes are beautiful to me. The Master Sword is my favorite weapon / item in the history of Zelda. I
Always.
love how majestic and grand they make it. And with this one, you put the sword in the pedestal, and it gets blessed with light. And that is so cool because the rest of the dungeon, your sword just has this golden glow to it. Which reminded
Yes.
me of playing A Link to the Past when you finally get the Master Sword. It's the red Master Sword in
The Tempered
A Link
Sword.
to the Past. The Tempered Sword in A Link to the Past. But once you get the level 3 sword in A Link Between Worlds, it's the Golden Sword. And it is beautiful. That sword is gorgeous, and I love that. Plus, the rest of the dungeon, the Palace of Twilight, is you're just ascending these different floors, fighting these shadow demons or whatever they're called, all the way up until you get to Zant.
Zant.
Which is the most insane motherfucker in the history of Zelda
He's
games.
insane.
And
He's
the
crazy.
personality
Yeah.
shift, because the entire
Xan's
game,
Yes.
crazy.
in the entire game, he's this brooding, like, cool figure who just comes in and he's chilling and you get like the shivers run down your back, and you
You get a vibe.
You get a
You
vibe. and
definitely
then
get a vibe.
He reveals his true persona, and that boss battle is so fucking insane that they based his entire moveset in Hyrule Warriors off of it.
Yeah. I also loved bringing back to your sword conversation there. I love how it's this big contrast to, because, of the Twilight Realm, how much it glows and how it shows how he is, restoring the balance of darkness and light. There's a really big analogy there in just that part where you're, getting the light blessed into the sword. It's very, like, again, for me, Twilight Princess is the most theatric. It has, the most cutscenes. It's very, very movie-like for a Zelda game. But it's just the theatrics of, just having like this beautiful light blessing the sword. I'm like, oh, it's so pretty. Like, I love it so much. It's one of my favorite parts about it.
It was a huge
Twilight
step up.
Princess.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
It's a game that I've come around on. Because I didn't really like it when I first played through it, and I feel like I carried that negativity just throughout my life for years. And then at some point, I was like, like, I love Zelda. Like, this game is really not as bad as I feel like I thought it was, as other people think it was. To the point where when the HD one came out, I was so looking forward to it, and I played it on Wii U. And like, I love that game. Like, I think there are definitely some shortcomings to it, and I think the criticism of it is definitely warranted. But there's so much to love and enjoy. Like, for Zelda games, even the bad ones are still pretty good. And Twilight Princess definitely has a lot to enjoy. And the Temple of Twilight is just so, like, that whole part of that game where you're actually entering the Twilight Realm is just so cool. And it's like, you don't know what's going to happen next. It brings you so far outside of your comfort zone.
And it's so like devastatingly beautiful too.
Is like, it's just such a cool, unique art style for everything in the Twilight Realm. It's really awesome.
Yeah, for sure, man. Twilight Princess, I again, like what Megan said, was just one of the more cinematic Zelda games. One of the first games that took that step. And like what you're saying, Dan, I agree with some of the criticism, but for me, that doesn't detract from the overall value of Twilight Princess. It's still one of my favorite Zelda games. Because kind of my tiered list, of course, is Breath of the Wild and Majora's Mask are both my favorites, and I actually decided to come out of my comfort zone and not use any of those games as dungeon recommendations this time around. But I would say Wind Waker and Twilight Princess for me are about equal, just a step lower than that. So those are like my number two together, and I can't decide which one I love better because I love them for different reasons. And Palace,
they're like the yin and yang of GameCube like era games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the precursor was Wind Waker, and then you have Twilight Princess, and they're like, it's so two drastically different games for Zelda. So it's like they're kind of the yin and yang of each other. They're that drastically different.
But there's something that they both have in common, I believe, which is that they build off of Ocarina of Time, and this is why I hold them in higher regard, because I respect Ocarina of Time as being like the greatest Zelda game. The OG. The greatest Zelda game in the sense of advancement and in the sense of what it brought. But in a personal favorite list, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess come out on top for me because I feel they took everything that I loved about Ocarina and improved on it, made it better.
Yeah.
And did more with it. And so the Palace
when you
of
think of Zelda, you think of Ocarina. Like, that's just the thing, you know?
You do. But then you think about Twilight, I think. Or at least I do. You know, as an actual...
I think about Skyward Sword, baby.
Twilight Princess is a natural... is kind of a natural sequel to Ocarina of Time, or successor, I should say, because Majora's Mask is the sequel, but... it definitely is, the next Ocarina of Time, or that's what it was trying to be. And the Palace of Twilight, I think, is just an awesome... actually kind of new concept, I mean, you kind of get some hints of Shadow Temple in there, but it also is its own thing, and the whole Twilight realm, and in general throughout the game, kind of has this surreal beauty to it. But whenever you actually enter the real Twilight realm, the home world, and you see the Palace of Twilight, it's utterly beautiful. And you got to, even though I say the graphics are a little bit dated, I mean, when you look at it, the visuals are still incredible.
They're stunning.
I love building fear and building tension in those side quarter sections, getting the souls. I love the light sword, which is the improvement on the master sword, and I love the boss Zant, and I love how you can how Zant reuses concepts from several different mini bosses and bosses throughout the game. And so
it's almost like he was watching you the whole time, it's intense.
Yes, perfect. Yes, exactly. And that's what makes it so cool. And maybe you wanted to bring that up, Zach, since this was your recommendation. You want to
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, because I love the boss fight against Zant. I think it's one of the cooler and I think that might make my list of like top bosses,
Bosses,
for sure, because
yeah.
of just how unique it was and how it took so many of the cooler boss fights in the game and combined it together with kind of a twist on it, and forcing you to have to use all of your items from the game, which is good because a lot of those games were underutilized as they were, and then remember what weaknesses that you had to exploit in those previous battles.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Because it's all of them combined into this one boss, and you're just like, it's not just, and I think that's another thing I love about it, is you're not just like, okay, what's my strategy? Like, you really have to think like, okay, if I do this, will he do this? I see that, this reminds me of something from this part of the game. Like, there's so much about the Zant fight that you're just like, what happens now? Yeah, it like literally flips you over on your head, and you're like, oh shit, shit.
What a weirdo, dude. But I guess I'll transition that into my next pick, which, funny enough, I'm gonna
Nope.
go for a what? No.
I'm just messing with
Nope.
you. Go ahead.
I was like, no, for a second, I realized you were messing with me, but for a second, I was like, wait, is it not my turn? I'm going to go with another Twilight Princess title, or Twilight Princess Dungeon, to kind of complete our little thing we got going on here. So I'm going to do the Goron Mines.
Ooh,
Yes! I was
that
hoping someone would talk about these.
Second to my Twilight Princess.
Yes!
That dungeon is incredible.
Yes. One of the most, again, a really innovative use of the items in the game, making the iron boots into a magnetic item. Honestly, it's just brilliant because in the original use, they were in Ocarina of Time, they were just used to sink in water. Wind Waker added the ability to walk past wind.
Yeah.
And then Twilight Princess adds this magnetic component to it. Not only that, but it's the dungeon where you get the bow in the game. And I always think that's just a nice segment in any Zelda game. Once you get the bow, and this is early on. This is the second dungeon. But once you get the bow, it kind of really turns the tables for you in terms of a lot of the more aerial or distant enemies. So that and then the mini boss I really enjoy as well. I love that whole fight. I love the progression of what you do to get to the Goron Mines with the pseudo wrestling. I hate that that's only that one part in the whole game. You know what happened one time is my friend Steven, who originally I'd invited to be on the podcast. He hasn't come on yet, but he's been my friend for years since high school. It was funny is one time he came over to my house and he was like, "Hey, can I play Twilight Princess?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, go for it." And so he plays through where I was at in the game, and I told him, just don't save. Whatever you do, just don't save because, I want to play through this part again because I haven't played the game in a while. And he's like, yeah. And then so he goes through, and it gets to the first pseudo wrestling match, and I'm like, did you save? Yeah, I did. Okay, that's fine. Just make sure, just please make sure you don't save the second one because I want to do one of the pseudo matches in the game, please. And then he saved, and so I missed both pseudo matches in that playthrough. I was pissed.
I would have been so
I think
angry.
the only thing I don't like about that dungeon is like there's not a lot of music in the Goron Mine, so you're just hearing ka-tunk, 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 ka-tunk,
Yeah,
ka-tunk
that's
when you're
true.
walking on the ceiling, and you're just like,
Yeah.
fuck, this is annoying! And you just want to get through it as soon as possible because you're just sitting here ka-tunk, ka-tunk, ka-tunk,
Yeah,
ka-tunk.
I will say that every single dungeon in Twilight Princess houses 2 pieces of heart. And this game is unique because you have to have 5 in order to complete a heart container instead of 4, which
Yep.
I honestly liked. It added for more exploration, more puzzles, and more treasure.
Yeah,
But
more.
this game, I really like this dungeon. The Goron Mines utilizes that really well. Because not only do you have to use the magnetic feature of the boots, but you have to walk upside down and traverse different paths in order to find which one leads to the piece of heart and which one leads to progression in the dungeon. And
Just walking on a ceiling and there's bats flying beneath you. You're like, oh, hey.
Yep. And the only thing I will say is that it's very slow. I don't like the slowness, but shooting the ropes with your bow is always a really cool feature in Zelda games. I like being able to bring down ledges and platforms with that kind of technique. They have always utilized that very well, especially in Breath of the Wild. Good Lord. But
or as
we're
we
not
call
talking
it,
about that game.
Death of the Child.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
That just got darker than Twilight
This
Princess.
is dark. What did I sign up for?
Sorry, buddy.
Good.
I meant like
I-
Death of the Inner Child. You become a man when you play this game.
Oh, I mean, true.
Okay, I mean that's still sad.
I'm
Yeah,
just
that's so
kidding. I
sad.
don't
Make
know.
me feel good.
It's a beautiful
So when I was playing through this dungeon on the HD edition, there's I like to try and 100% the dungeons and get all of the chests and everything. And there's one chest in this dungeon that I could not figure out how to get. And I finally looked it up, and you have to come back later because I believe you need the hook shot to reach it. And so there's just a chest hanging out on a ledge in the dungeon that you cannot get to, and you have to go and basically beat another dungeon and then return to it to get this chest. And I'm not even sure what's in it. It's either a piece of heart or it might be like 100 rupees. I forget.
It's 100 rupees.
It's 100 rupees.
Okay.
The pieces of heart are located at the end of one of the magnetic trails, and the other one is in a chest underneath that really big spire that's in the center, where you first go to get the key, and then you have to attach to the swinging magnetic thing and wrap around. But yeah, that would be sad if they had to make you come back and get a piece of heart. But I really like that.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say it was infuriating trying to figure out. I was like, I got to be able to reach that somehow. And then I buy the collector's edition Zelda guides when the games come out. And so I looked into it. It's like I could just Google this, but I paid like $30 for this book. So I'm going to open it up and get my answer here. And yeah, they're like, oh, you got to come back with the hook shot and find that later. It's like, all right, well, I'll keep playing the game then.
You know you're a real Zelda player whenever you have the book and you're still playing through it years and years later, and it's like duct taped together, and there's like earmarks in all of the pages that you need that are important. And I don't even want y'all to see mine because they're just like, they're bad.
It's fun to take those guides with you and just read them. Go ahead, Ash.
No, I was gonna say dungeon puzzles that require you to go back with a different item kind of frustrate me. I mean, it's cool. It gives you an opportunity. I'm glad that it's there because it gives you an opportunity to explore the dungeon again, which you normally wouldn't do. But it kind of does annoy me in one sense because I'm not likely to go back there and do it ever. I'm not, for me, like
It's not something to think about.
Yeah, exactly. But if more Zelda games added the ability to just like add notes to your map, that would be great. I like the way that Breath of the Wild just kind of lets you add like items or like little icons so you would know to come back. But yeah, did y'all like or dislike? Because I can kind of see both sides of this. Because I remember you mentioning the ruby chest and the Grand Mines. Did y'all like or dislike the fact that in the original version of the game, Link would put the rupees back in the chest if he didn't have enough room in his wallet for it?
I hated it.
I despise it. Wanting to 100% a dungeon when that happens, it's like, okay, now there's just this chest symbol on my map now that I can't do anything with.
Yep.
I would intentionally go to a shop and go buy some fucking potion just to go back. Like, I hated it.
They took that out in the HD version because I think for the consensus was most people didn't like that. I'm kind of torn on it because part of me, also hated that it was so annoying that every time I would go into a dungeon, I might have some chests that were left over that I didn't, and it would bother me because I would have to revisit the dungeon once again. Something I'm not likely to want to do.
But then later on, free money.
But
you know where the money is.
But not
that's
wasting
definitely
rupees
something
is
they
cool.
need to take away from Skyward Sword. Telling you every single time you find an item like a claw or a smaller rupee,
at least it doesn't do it with every rupee like Twilight Princess does.
Hey.
Congratulations!
Another thing the HD version.
Another
thing the HD version.
$5! Yeah,
Thank you.
just so excited. The game is more excited for you than you are about 5 rupees.
I know.
So if the Skyward Sword remake would also fix that, please.
Game's like, money! Yay! And you're like, okay, guys.
Tell me the
fucking
first
money,
time I
cool,
get
thanks.
it. That's it.
Yep.
Not the first time I get it when I
I
reload the
agree.
game.
Yeah,
Right.
I love, and I mentioned this, I think, before we started recording, but when you're playing through the tutorial of Twilight Princess, it not only assumes that you've never played a Zelda game, it assumes you've never played any video game ever. Like, it's such a thorough, like, this is what the A button does. This is all these things. Let's go herd these goats for 20 minutes. Like, it just brings you through so many things.
Yeah,
I love that though because like if you're gonna start like if I'm recommending a Zelda game, like obviously it's my favorite, so I'm gonna be like Twilight Princess. But if you've never played a Zelda game, it's a great introduction.
It is a good starter, actually. I'll
It's
agree.
true.
Ocarina of Time is kind of the go-to starter, but for a lot of like modern gamers, it might feel really dated, and the game isn't very big in scope.
Yeah.
So Twilight Princess is almost a perfect starter. Wind Waker was my first starting Zelda game, but I wouldn't recommend it because it's so different. I understood that when I played it. I knew that this was different than the other Zelda games, even though I hadn't really played them. But yeah, Twilight Princess is actually almost perfect because it's very similar to Ocarina of Time, but it might appeal to more modern gamers in the sense that the graphics are a little bit better, the game is a little bit longer, the world is bigger, there's more to do, and that tutorial segment kind of does ease you in a little bit. Maybe playing a game for the first time that a Zelda game for the first time, they may not be as frustrating for everyone else because we're kind of spoiled. We Zelda games usually, kind of push you into the adventure and don't hold your hand too much. Of course, Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword being notable examples of the opposite, but
Well, we still have 4 dungeons to get through.
we still have 4
We are-
dungeons to get through, and we're over an hour, so I guess let's get through it.
We're on round
All right.
3. My man, Dan.
All right.
Tell
Well,
us your plan.
I am going to bring us over to Link's Awakening, which I played originally a couple summers ago, and then I played the remake on Switch. And the Catfish's Maw is one of the most memorable dungeons in that game. It's the dungeon where you get the hook shot. It's where you have to fight the Master Stalfos, like from room to room, and there are multiple battles there. And then the boss in that dungeon is a slime eel, in which you need to use the hook shot and try to hit it in the face. I love like the more like water type themed levels. Not water levels. I don't really like those. But just having something around, not quite Water Temple of Ocarina of Time, but having just these cool like elements in here, I thought that was really cool. So the Catfish's Maw was definitely a highlight of that game.
That's the one in Martha's Bay that the ghost follows you to, right?
Yes.
Yes, I believe so.
And dude, Link. Oh man, I just snorted. I got so excited. But I went, oh. But no, Link's Awakening, the remake is just breathtaking. It is so good. And Catfish's Maw that's level 6, right?
I forget exactly which level it is. I can look up real quick, but I think it's up there.
Which instrument do you get?
Hey, you're breathtaking.
Yeah?
You're
Thanks.
too much.
Wait, are you talking to me or are you talking to Dan here? 'Cause now
Honestly,
we're gonna have a
Valentine's Day
problem.
passed, my dude.
Wait, ladies,
You-
I
you
don't.
can't shoot your shot.
Sorry, guys. I'm married, so but
Yikes.
Damn.
I was actually Zach was the one that brought up the word breathtaking. To be fair,
You know what? I wasn't even talking about human appearance. You brought this into-
I had to bring up the Keanu Reeves reference. I'm sorry, it had to happen.
You're breathtaking.
You're breathtaking. That was one of my favorite E3 moments. Like
Yes.
that and Giant Enemy Crab, if anyone remembers that.
Oh my god.
Oh man. Okay. So
Catfish
E3
Dan,
needs to hurry up and get
Maw.
here.
so Dan, that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
I'm trying to see exactly where in the game Catfish's Maw is. I think
Number
it's,
5.
It
It's
is
number
number
5.
5. Okay.
What's the instrument that you get?
You get the wind marimba.
The wind marimba.
Nice.
Da 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 da.
Oh God, you're bringing me
that's the-
back.
I think that's the tune that plays with every single dude. The
Yeah.
final song, the Windfish's song, is so beautiful.
Oh God.
Da, da, da,
And in
da, da,
Majora
da.
as well, right? Yeah. Whatever that one section.
Oh,
One
yeah.
side quest.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. Music in Zelda games is always fun when you get to
Oh,
interact
it's
and
the best.
use it to, like in the Ages and Seasons games, you just collect the essences and they just spin around in a really fast circle and deflect evil. But the instruments in Link's Awakening are very special because you basically spend the whole game collecting this orchestra of instruments, and at the very end, you conduct that piece to wake the Windfish, and you go in the egg and kill the nightmare. It's such a good classic game, and I think if they couldn't have picked a better game to fully remaster first, because that's
Yeah.
the first fully remastered Zelda game that we've ever seen. Link Between Worlds being a close second because it's basically a reimagining of A Link to the Past.
It's not a
But-
remaster, actually. It's a remake. That's what it is. And so that's why it's the first like true remake in the Zelda series that we've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And it's very beautiful. It runs at 60 FPS
Iconic.
if you're not doing anything at all. And then once you start moving, it goes to a solid 50.
Yeah. And the Catfish's Maw, that's the one I believe where you fight the Master Stalfos 3 times.
Yes,
The
yes,
mini
yes.
boss that doesn't die.
That's kind of annoying.
Keeps coming back. It's so frustrating. And with when you get the hook shot, so in Link's Awakening, there's that whole trading sequence that you need to do in order to finally beat the game. And there's just characters all over the world who, I need this item, I need this. And so you have to go and be their errand boy, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's this very extended sequence. But the Catfish's Maw is where you're able to get the hook shot and able to finally complete the final parts of that trading sequence and be able to get to the end stages of the game.
What is it name? Eyeglass. What's the name of the eyeglass that you get that allows you to read the book in the library that shows you the
I forget.
pathway inside of the egg? Dude, it's oh my gosh, the trading sequences in the 2D Zelda games are the best. Oh, I love it. I love being able to trade. There's one in Seasons, Ages, and Link's Awakening. I haven't seen a trading sequence in any other game.
I love being able to trade. I'm quoting you from that one. Just so memorable.
I love
Zachary
being able
Gio.
to tr-
I love being able to trade. True American. over here.
And that item, I think it's just the magnifying glass is what it's called. Very
magnifying
boring
glass?
name. Yeah.
Well,
Still-
He's
Little
like, what is the name of
magnifying
this
glass.
great item? He's like, magnifying glass.
All right, Megan.
moving on, Megan.
Oh God. Okay. I've kind of had a hard time picking this one just because there was a couple that I really wanted to do, and we were gonna do 5 originally. I'm thinking probably my next pick would probably be probably the Stone Tower Temple, Majora's Mask.
Yes.
Bagels.
So that is probably my number one favorite dungeon. I'm not gonna lie because I believe I had it as my number one on the top 10 list. And y'all know Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game, along with Breath. But out of the dungeons in Breath of the Wild are in some senses kind of underwhelming. So Stone Tower Temple comes out on top. That's the best dungeon in the best Zelda game. And man, I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you get into it. I'm not gonna take over your thing.
No worries. I figured that this would be a pick for a couple of us because, we all love Majora's Mask and we've talked about it, this is, with the dungeons, of course, this will be the 3rd time. So for me, I just love the fact that the Stone Tower Temple, you get to be all forms, right? So you're traversing through, you have to, switch back and forth. You're human, you're Goron, you're, Deku. It's just it's so crazy because you're just doing this and this and this. For me, it reminds myself of myself because I'm always multitasking and doing 10 things at once, and pretty much in this dungeon you're always doing 10 things at once. It's just you're going from this to shooting an arrow to doing this, and you're just oh my god, when does it stop? And also I love the fact that there's a couple of the games where you can see obviously where you're going next, but you can see this literally from Romani Ranch. It's huge.
Yeah,
Massive.
The Stone
The-
Tower, yeah.
It's
It's-
freaking huge. It's actually one that you're I know I'm gonna have to go there eventually. And
Getting there is a bitch too.
That's a tower so massive it hides a whole fucking temple inside of it.
yes, exactly. It's just I really had a hard time picking this, either that or the Forest Temple from Ocarina, because they're both so good. But this one I just I just really really loved being able to have so much of the aspects of gameplay in this one, because you're not just okay, this is meant for this purpose and I'm just going to use this one item. You're using almost all of your items in this dungeon.
You also, I love this dungeon because once you go all the way through it, it flips upside down.
Yeah,
and you
I
have
was
to
about
go
to say
back-
that.
And you have to go
Yeah.
back through it again. I think that's a really cool, and the mirror shield is dope.
Yeah.
I love the design of the mirror shield in this game. It's really cool. It looks just like a Goron face almost. But
Yeah, I love that this game also, not this game. Dang it, we keep saying game and it's stuck in my head. This dungeon, I love that this dungeon literally turns itself on its head and it's okay, you thought you were done and you're oh man, that was pretty easy, for the hardest freaking game in the Zelda, series. This was not too bad. And then it's and then you're oh, no. And you just get so mad because you're you're joking.
It's
I
one
have
of the
to go
harder
through this whole
ones.
thing over again, and
Yes.
it's completely different.
It's long enough on its own, and then you have a whole, half of it upside down. It's one of the harder ones that's to 100%, because you have to keep flipping it several times just to get to that point.
And plus, you're already
Yeah.
on a time limit. You know, it's
Yes.
so hard to 100% this game in general.
This is a dungeon. Most temples in Majora's Mask, I had a habit of resetting time, so I'd have the entire 3-day cycle to tackle the dungeon. Normally, I wouldn't need it. Normally, I'd get it done within the first or second day, right? Stone Tower Temple is one that you kind of need all 3 days. You really do.
Yeah, you really do.
If you're gonna 100% it for sure, like if you're gonna get all of the fairies and everything else that the dungeon has to offer, yeah, there's a lot to do.
Play the inverted Song of Time. Get more time for yourself.
Well, for sure, yeah. There's no
I
way.
don't know how people do a 3-day challenge with this game, which
Ash has
I've
tried it so many
never
times.
done.
I have tried it.
It seems impossible.
It is impossible in the 3DS version because they changed the speed at which the inverted Song of Time runs, which really pisses me off because there's things I love about it and there's things I hate about it, and we've talked about it before. But the 3-day challenge is particularly difficult. Just that initial part of it. I feel like if I could just get to Romani Ranch before the first night, I'd be okay. But or before during the first day, that's really the struggle. Is you have to get through half of the first dungeon, half of the Woodfall Temple, half of the Snowhead Temple, get the fire arrows, melt the ice, get the powder keg, and then blow up Romani Ranch and get Epona all before the first night, so that you can have Epona to get to the Ikana graveyard on the first night. And that's the only reason you have to do that. Everything else you can do pretty much as you normally would. But yeah,
Just because you have to get so much at once. Yeah, it's just like
I haven't managed to do it yet. I haven't managed to get through that first section yet, just because you have to really know your shit. And I know my shit when it comes to
I tried it one
Majora's
time and
Mask.
cried for 2 hours afterwards because I could not do it.
I mean, it's nice having emulator or virtual console save states, I will say. That does make it quite a bit easier, although some may consider that cheating. I understand if you feel that way. But I'm honestly just trying to get through it. I'm trying to get through it. And even then, save states aren't as helpful as you'd like them to be, because if you mess up at all and you lose time, you don't want to save that. You want to kind of go back to a save state before you screwed everything up. So
Yep.
But yeah, Stone Tower Temple, I love the item, the light arrows. I love the boss twin mold. Definitely better than the original version of the game. Although I do appreciate 3DS version kind of splitting that up and forcing you to use the Giant's Mask was cool. But finding the Giant's Mask as an optional item and beating that boss kind of did make it a little bit cooler.
I loved getting that mask.
Well, okay, so are we doing the last ones here, Ash?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
God.
it's your pick last, Zach.
Oh my God, dude, this took me forever to really think about, but then once the dungeon popped into my head, I was like, there's no other choice. And I feel like Ash knows what my choice is, but I'm definitely going to have to go with Skykeep from Skyward Sword.
I knew it.
That is one of the best dungeons in the Zelda series. I absolutely love it, because not only does it take place in your home village of Skyloft, up in the sky. Once you get that second eye and you put it in the statue, it just turns around slowly and then just fires a little cannonball into the side of that giant rock. And it's so funny because it's just quiet and still for a second after it happens. And you're just watching this whole cutscene and you're like, is that it? And then the Isle of the Goddess starts shaking and the bottom of it just cracks open, and the cinematic is so powerful because the music in that game is unmatched. It's just this giant spiral castle, this upside down castle is coming out of the bottom of the Isle of the Goddess, and it's intense. And it fires out, and that same statue that fired out that little ball fires out these 4 little things. You don't even know what they are, but they have hookshot. They're targets. They have hookshot targets. And you pull yourself to the entrance, and Link closes his eyes. It's so cool. Link closes his eyes and kind of puts the sword to his chest. And then he looks at the staircase, and for the first time in the game, he just sprints straight up the staircase going into the dungeon. Once you get into Skykeep, the music is amazing. It's this instantly ominous harp and like choir vocals that just are so dark and deceptive that just kind of like go. You hear them and you just kind of shiver a little bit because it's kind of eerie. But the whole point of this dungeon is to find the shards of the Triforce, the Triforce of courage, power, and wisdom. And basically this whole dungeon is one giant puzzle where you have to go to these stations and use what would you call them? like tablets or something like that. They're these giant podiums that you
Yeah.
can literally switch the design of the entire dungeon to make certain rooms line up.
Yeah.
And that is so phenomenally brilliant to me.
And trying to
It
find
is-
the most like efficient way to like go through multiple rooms at once.
It's ingenious.
Yeah.
The puzzles are awesome. It includes a different taste of each section that you visited. Like there's a Fair and Woods section that kind of emulates the ancient cistern as well as the Skyview Temple. They kind of mold those together. It's really cool. The second one is like the Fire Sanctuary, but with a more earthy Earth Temple vibe with how it's laid out. And the final section is basically like the not the Shadow Temple, the bottom of the ancient cistern, as well as you have to use time shift stones to solve like a little puzzle to be able to hit certain targets with arrows. And once you're able to find all the pieces of the Triforce, that's it. There's no boss. There's no anything like that. It immediately gives you the chance to go into the past, once again fight the imprisoned, which sucks. I hate that fight so much. And then once you finally go into the past...
Fuck the imprisoned.
Yeah, I hate it. Once you finally go into the past, Girahim takes Zelda and goes down to the bottom of the, whatever it's called, the Sacred Grove or whatever it is.
Sacred
It's at the
Grounds.
bottom. And Sacred Grounds, yeah. Or Sacred Realm or whatever it is. And Sealed Grounds, that's what they're called.
Sealed grounds. Yeah.
And once you're out there, Girahim has started the ritual at the bottom of the grounds, and you just have to go all the way around while facing just horde after horde of bokoblins.
Yeah.
You fight Girahim, and then you fight Demise in what is probably the coolest boss atmosphere
Oh
in
my
the
God,
entire
yes.
series. But Skykeep just leads up to all of that, and that's why this is such a good dungeon. It doesn't have a boss, but it connects with the very end of the game. Kind of like Hyrule Castle from Twilight Princess, except the boss and the dungeon are directly connected. Once you open the boss door,
Yeah.
there you fight the 4 stages. But I love Skykeep so much. It takes elements from the entire game, has you rely on every single item. The Elden style puzzle, you have to use the beetle to hit the switches and time arrow shots perfectly.
It's hard.
It's brilliantly done, and it's very difficult. And it's my favorite.
The time shift puzzles are fairly difficult too. In
Oh,
that
yeah.
section. I remember getting a little bit stumped, even on my most recent playthrough. And I've beat it before, but yeah, Skykeep is one of my favorites. I'm surprised Cistern was on nobody's list because I actually deliberately kept it off my list because I know somebody was going to bring it up.
So it's actually number 1 on my list, but I ended up going with the Sand Ship instead. But I love the Ancient Cistern so much.
Okay.
Oh yeah, dude, that's such a good dungeon.
Good. I'm glad at least it was on someone's like backup. Yeah, Skykeep is one of the more phenomenal ones for me. I should have seen that one coming for you, Zach, because you've really ranted to me about that one before. I know you like that.
God,
one.
I love that dungeon.
And,
I love that dungeon.
I think maybe they're like fake pea hats. That's what I see them as. Those little claw shot targets.
Yeah. Yep.
I enjoy that one quite a bit as well because it does offer a sample of what every kind of puzzle and area has to offer in the game, and it is definitely, I believe, a good trial of both courage, power, and wisdom. And I like how you collect each piece of the Triforce. I think it's the only Zelda game that actually has you complete the Triforce.
Mm-hmm. And leading up to Skykeep, you have to do I love the Silent Realms. They're some of my favorite parts about Skyward Sword.
I
How
actually like them,
terrifying
yeah.
They're terrifying and they're difficult
Yes.
because once you wake up the Guardians, they are all hunting you, and that is a horrific experience. And so, getting that last tier, or whatever it is, whatever you're collecting, tiers. Yeah, I think they're tiers. And you get the gift. What's the gift that you get? It's the eye, right? That you put in
It's
the statue?
The eye you put in the statue, yeah.
Yeah. And so, oh my gosh. Oh,
That's
I
right.
see your cat, Megan.
Yeah, that's Margot.
Margot. Iris is just asleep.
Any
on the bed, as
any
always.
other thoughts? I know you haven't played it, Megan, but any other thoughts?
No,
on the,
y'all are making me super stoked for this game though, because y'all have talked so much about Skyward Sword.
well,
I'm like,
you
oh,
gotta
I gotta
switch
play
now.
it.
So,
It's
I
amazing.
know, I'm so stoked. Oh my
any
God.
thoughts on
Yeah.
the Skykeep, Dan?
I am really excited to revisit Skyward Sword in general. So many dungeons in this game I don't remember that well, including Skykeep. But I love Skyloft is one of my favorite locations just in any game, and I feel like in a lot of ways it felt similar to Clocktown from Majora's Mask. Not necessarily because it's exactly like that, but just having a centralized hub from where you have like a home base. Like I felt like I hadn't had a home in a Zelda game in a long time. So it felt nice to have a place to return to with familiar people, and there was like actual, people you could talk to and get to know the NPCs more than some of the other Zelda games.
I did like that, kind of having that hub as Skyloft. I don't like that the game map is so separated, but the fact that you always have
Yeah.
Skyloft to return to actually is a really cool aspect of the game that I enjoy. I guess we'll go into our final picks. I guess I'll go ahead and reveal both of them. But my final dungeon recommendation is gonna be the Forest Temple from Ocarina of Time.
Yes!
If one of y'all had
Mine
taken
too.
that, it was going to be the Shadow Temple. So I had kind of both backed up there.
Me too.
And you took
Yeah.
my other pick, which is Snow Peak. So that's why I had us all pick 5. And I'll give you guys a chance to at least shout out the ones that y'all had. But Forest Temple for me was going to be my main choice between the two, just because it's got what I love about the Stone Tower Temple, and that you literally turn the entire world upside down. I love that there are certain parts of the dungeon where everything is completely just twisted all around. I love the fact that and they bring this back. I think Arbiter's Grounds was one that could have easily made my list as well.
Yes.
But
we have similar thoughts
I think
on this.
I think in the same way that I wanted to leave some Skyward for Zach, I wanted to leave some Twilight for you. But
Okay.
I love that the Forest Temple was they kind of brought that back in the Arbiter's Grounds with the 4 Poes thing. So getting the 4 Poe sisters and fighting each of them, and then finally the boss of Phantom Ganon, who is one of the more memorable bosses in the game, and just the whole theme in the Forest Temple is kind of haunting. It's the first dungeon in the game that features wall masters, which still terrify me to this day. Like, no, don't bring me to the beginning of the dungeon. Ah!
Oh man. Oh dude, we have been talking for how long now?
About hour and some. Let's see, hour and a half.
Sorry, guys. My husband came home.
Alan.
Yo!
There's a lot of cool stuff in the Forest Temple, and there's more. I don't have the specifics to speak to it now, but there's so many like fan articles and YouTube videos about like the origin of the Forest Temple and how it was built, why it was created, and there's so much more stuff into the lore of that is super cool. That I definitely recommend checking out and looking more into.
And it's the first dungeon that you come into as adult Link.
Yes.
Yeah, it also has probably the best music out of any dungeon in the entire series.
You stole the words out of my mouth.
It's so good. Like the music is something that you can listen to on repeat when you're like just having a chill time, whether you're working on something.
But it's sort of haunting, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's enough to keep you on your toes and keep you focused on what you're doing. So
I'm so excited to do another Ocarina playthrough. It's been too long.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
for
I need
me,
to finish this playthrough.
I think that's the Zelda game I've probably played through the most amount of times. That in Majora.
Twilight
Yeah.
Princess.
What were you gonna say,
I've done
Megan?
Twilight Princess like 15 times.
Nice.
I will still play through it. I do not care.
Your fault.
I just there's just so much that I love about the Forest Temple, and I don't even know where to start because like it's like one of the biggest moments because like you go into the game as a child and you go inside the Deku Tree, which is technically your first kind of like dungeon, and then it's paralleled as an adult in the Forest Temple, and there's so much that I love about it, and it just really kind of, for me, it really brings the game together because you're kind of cut up into all these parts throughout the game, and it just really brings like this, okay, this is the like the really driving part for you as an adult, where you're getting this first big temple when you're in your adult self. I know that sounds really weird, but like Ocarina's really weird. Zelda's really weird.
It sets the tone for the game because most of the game of Ocarina really is set more in the adult period. It's not really half and half. It's like like a third and 2/3 maybe. But it really sets the stage for what's going to be the rest of the game and really sets the tone for that whole segment. And only reason I was going to pick Shadow Temple as a possible alternative is because I know that one kind of subverts expectations of what a dungeon should be, because after really setting the standard for dungeons throughout Ocarina of Time, that's the one that really kind of throws you for a loop. Like, you don't use the dungeon item to defeat the boss, and some other things like that, and it's just so creepy and weird, and all the spinning traps. But when I really think about
in the hands,
Forest Temple was also creepy and just more memorable in some ways. It's one of the dungeons that you immediately think of when you think of Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, for me, it's the Water Temple and the Forest Temple. Like, that's the two I think of. Like, of course, whenever you think of a Zelda game, you're like, stupid freaking Water Temple. Like, if I had to pick 5 worst dungeons, it would just be all of the Water Temples that I've been through. Like, come on now. But
future episode, top 5 worst or top 5 worst. Does that work? Bottom 5? I don't know. Top 5 worst Zelda dungeons.
Yeah, and they would all be Water Temples.
They would all be Zelda CDI.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
CDI doesn't
horrible.
CDI doesn't really have dungeons, and
that's not a Zelda game. That's like the Walmart Zelda game.
No, it's not, and we've played it. It's bad. It's not. That's one of those games that it's worth, like, the cutscenes are so bad that they're good. It's worth, like, checking out a playthrough of it. And it's not worth playing. It's not in, like, even one of those experiences that you need to have. Any other thoughts on the Forest Temple, guys?
I love how it kind of connects with the Arbiter's Grounds, and how Twilight Princess kind of gives it a little homage by doing the 4 post souls.
Yeah.
Again, I really like that. But yeah, you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head. Phantom Ganon is one of the best bosses in Ocarina of Time, in my opinion.
Oh, yes.
And it kind of gives you a little taste of how you're going to fight him.
When you think of bosses, you think of Ganon. I mean, that's for me personally. When I think of, like, an intense boss, a scary boss, I think of Ganondorf. Ganondorf.
Oh, yeah?
We always called him Ganondorf. I don't know about y'all.
Yeah.
But he's got this big old nose, and, like, if you put on glasses, he looks like a stereotypical nerd.
You can literally
just saying.
smell the Triforce.
Yes. Like, it's just he's weird.
Oh man.
Join me, Link, and I shall make you one of the greatest faces in Korodai, or else you will die.
Oh man, we've been rambling, but dungeons are easily one of the best things about the Zelda series. That sense of exploration, finding things, solving puzzles. I really think The Legend of Zelda does it the best with these different segments. Now, I wish that Breath of the Wild had gone more in detail with traditional style dungeons, but the Divine Beasts were very unique and very enjoyable, but they did not make our list for that very reason, because
yeah. So I guess kind of let's go around then, and I know we're over on time, but just real quick, I'm curious about what some of you guys' other picks were. Just real quick.
My other pick was Arbiter's Grounds from Twilight Princess, so we matched each other on that one, Ash.
I was definitely going to include what is it? Oh my God, it's escaping my brain. No, come on, Zach. I was about to say the Wind Temple from the Wind Waker, but I actually hate that dungeon.
I love that dungeon.
The Earth Temple in Wind Waker was called the Wind Temple.
There we go. Dark Hyrule Castle from the Minish Cap. That dungeon is phenomenal. Just the climb, the bosses and the mini bosses, and then
and your first choice. Palace of the Winds.
Palace of the Winds, yeah. Oh yeah, that was my first choice. We've been recording for such a while. I already forgot that I originally chose Palace of Winds. I love that.
My
dungeon.
Dude.
It's a really good one. It's kind of like an add-on to the third dungeon, the Temple of Winds.
Yeah.
Because you don't find the element. You don't find the element in the Temple. You find basically where the element of wind is, and so you have to traverse that and get the final element from the Palace of Winds. So it's really cool. That whole story arc is awesome, but Dark Hyrule Castle perfectly sums up the end of a 2D game, the way its styles and puzzles coalesce, and you have to use every item at some point. It's just really fun.
Dan, you said the Ancient Cistern, and what else?
Yeah, well, Ancient Cistern, which was the dungeon that taught me what a cistern is, which the definition of that word is just a tank for storing water, especially for supplying taps or a flushing toilet. So not sure, feeling differently about that temple, but no, that was great. The Shadow Temple was another one of mine.
Yep.
Lot of lore behind that, especially when you look at some of like the torture chamber parts of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Super
yeah.
disturbing. And I love the that like ship, the boat that you get on, and you have to battle as it takes you like
The
through
Ferry
the
of the
afterlife.
Dead.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the last one I had was the Cave of Flames from the Minish Cap.
Yes, come on.
Oh,
yeah.
that's a good one.
A
Yes,
lot of
it
really
is.
good dungeons in Minish Cap, and that was definitely one of the ones I liked.
I've
Oh,
heard
yeah.
some of the lore of the Shadow Temple. I'd have to check out the Forest Temple lore that you were talking about earlier. I'll have to check that out because I haven't seen too much of that.
Yeah, there's like a half-hour long video on YouTube that a user created a couple of years ago that went around, and it dives really, really deep into theories about the origin of the Forest Temple.
It's not Matt Pet though, is it?
No, it is not. This is different.
All right, guys. Well, I guess that's good for now. Y'all seem kind of burnt out. I mean, y'all are like, you're like zombies.
I'm about to hit the 3-hour mark. This is lit.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, we have been on the call because we had that initial recording session. So, but yeah, I mean, you can find Collateral Gaming wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, YouTube, or wherever else. You can also find us on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Try to stay up with those. And we have a Patreon. We have $1 and $5 tiers. Paying any amount of money will give you access to our Let's Play video game commentaries. And we've actually been kind of releasing a few more of those. Finally got a little bit up to date. We have done our very first one was on Fable 3. We did, and that's the only one that's available for free. Everything else you got to pay for, aside from the very first episode of each playthrough. We give you a little taste. So we've got one on Breath of the Wild that's still ongoing. We've done one on Zelda CDI on the Link: The Faces of Evil. I've got one started on Assassin's Creed 2, and then one on Majora's Mask.
Oh, nice.
Heck yeah, dude.
All
Yeah.
right.
Heck yeah. Yeah, it's looking to be a pretty good year for games. It's only March, so we've got a lot of good stuff to hopefully talk about. Hopefully, since we've
Yes.
dove into Zelda pretty much recently, it's really hopeful that we'll see a lot more Zelda content this year. We can only hope, you know.
Please.
We-
That's what
I-
this episode coincided with, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Oh,
you
yeah.
off. But
No, you're good.
35th anniversary of Zelda is kind of the reason why I wanted to come back and do like another Zelda bonus round episode. So,
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as the year goes on, but it's also the 35th anniversary of Metroid, another title that Ash and I
Yes.
absolutely love.
Yes.
Dan, do you like Metroid?
I do, and I am so excited to see Nintendo ignore it once again. And
I'm trying to not screech because I
Do
was about to say
nothing.
the same thing.
Dude, Metroid
Literally
Prime,
love Metroid so much. Samus
Metroid-
Bay.
yeah.
Metroid Prime is probably one of the best games of all time. I love that game. If they remaster it, I would cry my eyes out.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Absolutely.
have to do
Just,
something.
I'm fairly new to Metroid, so I've only played Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2 on the Wii U with the Trilogy Collection, and 3 is on my list as well. But no, I love those games. They're super challenging. I can't get through without a guide personally. The puzzles are just like so intrinsic, like on another level compared to
Love it.
Zelda or other games.
Yeah.
But no, they're so fun, and I love just the idea of like a sci-fi Nintendo game being set in outer space. Like that's awesome.
it's
So
kind of like the
really
so
space
much fun.
Zelda in a lot of ways, is what I
It
compare
really
to.
is.
And I tell people that anyone that loves Zelda, you should play Metroid. And speaking of which, that's our next game that we're doing. Ghost of Tsushima
Metroid
Part
Fusion,
2
baby.
should be out by the time this is out, and then we're going to be doing Metroid Fusion as our
Yes.
next title. Dan, did you want to kind of plug Victims and Villains for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am primarily over at the Victims and Villains podcast. If you guys want to come check us out over there, we do really anything with pop culture. We cover movies, we cover shows, all through the lens of mental health and promoting awareness of suicide and suicide prevention. So there's a lot of really good work being done with the guys over there. And yeah, we occasionally talk video games too. So definitely keep an eye out on my Twitter at drock6499. I got to really get a better handle with fewer numbers. But apart from that, it's there's a lot of really fun stuff going on over there.
Hell
Yeah, anytime we're talking about podcasts, I know for definitely Ash and I, whenever we say, if you don't want to listen to us, we always recommend Victims and Villains. We love y'all. I personally listen to y'all's podcast a lot on my way home from work.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I try to stay up to date, and if y'all release anything that I'm, that's interesting to me, I definitely like to keep up with that and listen to the perspective. And Captain Nostalgia is fun. Have had a lot of good time recording with him. We've interacted with the Victims and Villains podcast a couple times. Personally, with Collateral Gaming, like I mentioned before, we did that Majora's Mask episode. Dan was on that as well. We did the live stream where we did the awareness-a-thon. Collateral
That was
Cinema
fun.
and Collateral Gaming both had an hour segment on each of those, and Megan joined me for that. Collateral Cinema has interacted with Victims and Villains a couple times as well. Looks like we may be even kind of doing an annual thing where we do our Christmas special together. So, because we've done it for 2 years now.
Yeah, I know.
and we did our most recent, like, kind of a Christmas crosscast, or holiday crosscast on that. If you don't listen to Collateral Cinema, that is the video or the movie podcast counterpart to Collateral Gaming, our sister podcast, and where we started out from. I'm a host on that as well. I do that with Bo Maddox and Robert Ortegon, and Zach's going to join on with us fairly soon. I know
Yes, sir.
Zach wanted to hop on one of our episodes, so we'll be doing that soon.
Alan's planning on being on an episode eventually.
Yeah, for sure, dude. And Dan,
He's a big
I
movie
know
buff.
you're a movie guy too. So if you ever want to be on Collateral Cinema, reach out. You can reach out to me or you can reach out to Bo. Because we're always down to have people on.
Please, that'd be awesome. I'm actually, when I get off here, I will be revisiting Man of Steel for the first time for me since it came out.
Nice, that's a great one.
So,
That's so
yeah,
good.
Josh and I will be recording that episode tomorrow and doing our journey to the Snyder cut of Justice League.
To the
So
Snyder cut?
we're
Yeah.
checking out.
Ooh,
Y'all
Yeah.
been posting a lot
Nice.
about that. Man of Steel for me is actually pretty all right. Batman,
love that movie.
Batman versus Superman was terrible. I don't know.
I mean, but on a real note, how can you not love Henry Cavill? Like, let's just be real.
Oh, Henry Cavill's
True.
great. Henry Cavill is probably the best part about that and Justice
He's the
League.
best Superman.
He's also a huge nerd, and I love
Yes!
it.
Yes,
Witcher.
he built
So
his own
great.
PC.
He did.
I
I
love him.
love that video of him. And something I wanted to do was have a tech person like rate the specs of the PC he was building. I'm sure somebody
Yes.
did it, but it's like, oh, like that graphics card and that RAM, like that's great. He's gonna be able to run so much stuff.
That would be great.
He plays
Like, honest
Overwatch
tech
in his
review.
spare
Oh
time.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he
Oh.
does, and he like is obsessed with like the things that he's been on. I love Henry Cavill so much. I could go on. He's a great man, great guy.
But
Totally agree. And it's I know this is kind of a tangent, but Vin Diesel is like a huge like Dungeons and Dragons player. Like he loves D&D, and it's
What?
just there's so many
That's
actors out there that are
amazing.
just like big tough guys, and then they're they're huge nerds, and I
They're
love
soft
seeing
Game
that.
Boys at
Makes
home.
me
I
so
love it.
Johnson is a
happy.
brony. That would be amazing.
dude,
That'd be amazing. I love it.
but
Oh,
yeah,
man.
you never know who really is a gamer. I mean, there's so many celebrities Robin Williams was one of them that he named his daughter Zelda. I mean,
Oh yeah.
would have never known watching his movies, but that's always interesting. But I guess that's kind of all we have for today, folks. We are really running over on a bonus round, but hey, we had a lot to talk about, so I don't regret
We
it. I don't
did.
regret a minute of it.
No regrets.
There was no dead air. Dan, again, thank you so much for being on. I really want to have you on in the future. If you're interested in that Skyward Sword episode, for sure, dude, I want to get you on that. Other than that, guys, stay positive, stay healthy, stay happy, and take care of yourselves, take care of each other. So
Aye, aye, Captain.
that being said, I'm Ashley Chancellor.
I'm Zachary Gio.
I'm Megan Gomez.
And I'm Dan Rockwood.
We are Collateral Gaming. We are out.
Yeah.
Yay!
Collateral Gaming is a Collateral Media podcast. All music and game clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.